Hey, it's Kyle here, and this is my second installment in a series of videos I'm doing in 2018 where I focus on my favorite books in certain literary genres. In this video, I'll be focusing on my favorite sci-fi books of all time. I am doing actually a top 10 video for this genre. Most of the genres I'm just doing a top 5, but I'm such a big sci-fi fan. When I was going through my books, I had a hard time just limiting it to 5, so I decided I really wanted to spotlight 10. So this is going to be a little bit longer video, and then also one thing I'll mention later at some point in 2018, I'm also doing a video from our favorite dystopian books, and there's definitely some of the dystopian books that could fall in the sci-fi category and vice versa, so I tried to feature each of them like a book only in one video. So there's some of the ones that I feel like are better classified as dystopian that definitely could be considered sci-fi that didn't make this list because I decided to feature them in the other video. So just keep that in mind. If there's some books you think like, wow, I'm surprised he didn't mention that. Well, if it's a dystopian book, there's a good chance I might make that video, which I'll probably do in sometime in the next week or two. So just keep an eye out for that. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and start with my list. Number 10, Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles. Bradbury is one of my favorite authors of all time. He definitely ranks in my top 5. Depending on my mood, sometimes he is my favorite author. This is a great collection of short stories. They're all set on Mars. Just love it. His short stories are just awesome. The various ways he approaches stories on a setting like Mars is very, very interesting. Absolutely loved this book when I read it the first time. It blew me away. I think this might have been the first time I ever really read a book of like a collection of short stories, and I absolutely loved it. And every other collection of short stories I've read from Bradbury I loved as well, but this one definitely makes my sci-fi list. So number 9 is Red Shirts by John Scalzi. Scalzi is one of my favorite current authors. Every book of his I've read recently I've really loved, and Red Shirts was actually the first one I read. Very, very funny book. John Scalzi has such a great sense of humor, and this book is basically set in the concept of if anybody's ever watched any of the Star Trek movies or TV shows, you know what the term red shirts is referring to. Well, this book is basically focusing on the red shirts as being the main characters and what the storyline must be like from their point of view, where we usually hear it from the main character's point of view, like the bridge crew, for example. But there's a very interesting twist to this book that makes it very unique and very interesting. So if you enjoy sci-fi and you love a real funny read, I would definitely recommend Red Shirts by John Scalzi. It's awesome. Number 8 is The Martian by Andy Weir. I know some people wouldn't really classify this as science fiction because the technology depicted in it is very realistic, more realistic than usually is presented in sci-fi. But I decided to kind of throw it in sci-fi because it is technology we currently don't have, and obviously at the moment some of the stuff is a little bit of a reach, but it's all reasonable. So this is a book that's currently, in my opinion, science fiction, but within 10, 15, 20 years it could very much be science fact. But I love The Martian, both the book and the movie. I know this is a huge bestseller, so a lot of people have read it. If you've never read The Martian, do it. It is absolutely awesome. It's a very great example of a character overcoming seemingly odds completely against his favor. It's a great explanation, I think, of human nature and how humans deal with crisis situations and stuff like that. So definitely read The Martian by Andy Weir. It is awesome. And if you haven't seen the movie, watch the movie. It is awesome as well. Next up, number 7 on my list is Dune by Frank Herbert. Love the Dune Chronicles. It's a great series. It's one of my favorite series of all time. And Dune really gets the series off to a great start. I remember when I read Dune for the first time, which wasn't that long ago, it's just a few years ago. It was one of those books, once I read it, I instantly knew, like, oh, I want to read every other single book in this series. And I think I instantly bought every single book. The first book definitely sold it. Loved it. I know some people find Dune a little dense and wordy and maybe hard to get into, but I did not find that the case at all. I absolutely love Dune and would love to see a new theatrical take on Dune. I know there has been some in the past. There was a movie in the 80s, there was a sci-fi miniseries in the, I believe, early 2000s that I actually watched, and I actually watched that before I'd ever read the books. But I'd love a new take on Dune. I think Dune actually might be better suited instead of a movie. I can see it maybe being like a series on HBO or Showtime or maybe Netflix or something like that, where there's more time to tell the story. Because I think that's one struggle with Dune. It's such an epic story and how much it covers. It can be hard to cover in like a 2-hour movie. So anyway, Dune is awesome. Check it out. Number 6 is Ready Player One, which obviously the movie will be coming out later this year. I'm super excited for. Love Ready Player One. I think of all the books I've read in the last few years, maybe this is the book that once I started reading, I read the quickest because I found it so engaging that like I have to read this as quickly as humanly possible. I cannot put this book down. It is very much the definition of a page turner. Very funny, great action, great characters, great storyline. A lot of nostalgia mixed in, which, you know, anybody in my generation knows that nostalgia is king at the moment, and Ready Player One is an awesome use of nostalgia where it's a great part of the storyline, but the story still works. I know sometimes there's stuff people like that's just for nostalgia's sake, but there's not much beyond nostalgia. There's a lot more beyond nostalgia in Ready Player One. So if you haven't read Ready Player One, I'd really encourage you to read it before the movie comes out. The movie looks awesome. I mean, Spielberg's behind it, so you know it's probably going to be good. So read the book and then go see the movie when it comes out. Next up, now we are in the top 5. Foundation by Isaac Asimov, the first book of the Foundation series. Again, much like Dune, read this book, I instantly knew I have to read this entire series, buy all the books at once. I love the concept of this book being centered around a world where a brilliant mathematician has basically developed formulas that allow humanity to basically predict their future and help guide their civilization and make decisions and be ready for stuff. It's absolutely fascinating look of how that concept can help be used to better humanity's existence. It's a brilliant sci-fi setting. The characters, the planets, the conflicts that come up. Really love the Foundation series. I think it gets overlooked sometimes compared to some of the other great sci-fi series. I think partly because I think Foundation, the way it's laid out, is really hard to do as a movie or TV show, whereas a lot of other ones, that's how the book has been introduced into the wider conscious of humanity, is what it's all about. And I think for Foundation, it's really hard to do that the way some other books have. So, but if you haven't read Foundation, Isaac Asimov is absolutely a master of science fiction. If you haven't read the series, you really need to. So check the first book out, and I think you'll get hooked. Number 4 is a more recent series, the first book in it, Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Love this book. I actually just recently purchased Pierce Brown's newest book, literally a day or two ago. And once I finish reading the current book I'm on, I'll be starting the one right away. And to me, that's a good sign of how much you like a series, that when a new book comes out, it instantly goes to the top of your to-be-read pile. Because I have a stack of 20 or 30 books waiting to be read. So a lot of times when I buy a new book, it goes to the end of the list. Pierce Brown's new book went instantly to the front of the line. Red Rising is a great book. I think some people, because the characters are teenagers, and it kind of came out when YA dystopian was becoming super popular with the Hunger Games and Divergent, Maze Runner, stuff like that. And a lot of people just assumed Red Rising was another YA dystopian book series, and it's not. It is more hardcore science, sci-fi, military fiction, whose main characters just happen to be teenagers. It's in no ways similar to any other of the YA dystopian books. I think some people didn't read Red Rising because they just assumed it was YA dystopian. They're like, I'm not really into that genre. And I should say I love YA dystopian, but I know some people are just not into that genre, and they just assumed, oh, Red Rising's just one of those books they're trying to make money off the Hunger Games trend. that's not the case. It's completely different. It has great science fiction. It also has an interesting mix of ancient humanity, using like Roman culture to kind of inspire a futuristic society set in our solar system. So if you haven't read Red Rising by Pierce Brown and you really love great science fiction, you owe yourself to read this book. Number 3, Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. The inspiration for me to finally read this book, I always heard it was great, and just one of those books I just never got around to getting, is when they announced that we're going to do a movie. I was like, all right, I always wanted to read this book. A movie's coming out. I really want to read the book before the movie comes out. So I went out and got the book and absolutely loved it. The movie was good. It wasn't great. There were some choices I were exactly crazy about. It was good, but the book is absolutely brilliant. The characters are great. The character of Ender is amazing. All his friends in the book are amazing. The relationships they have and how they proceed through the schooling and military matters that they're dealing with is great. The setting's awesome. The concept's great. The ending is amazing. It's one of the better endings, I believe, in sci-fi history. So if you haven't read Ender's Game, check it out. The series overall is really good too. The good thing is they all kind of function as standalone books. So you can read Ender's Game and not feel like, oh, I have to read the rest of the series. But to me, the other books are worth the read. I will say Ender's Game is by far the best book in the series. All the other ones are very, very good, where Ender's Game is, in my opinion, all-time great. So check out Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card if you haven't read it before. Number 2, my only author to have 2 books in this list is Ray Bradbury with Fahrenheit 451. And I actually had a hard time placing this book because I thought this could be on my dystopian list. But at the end, I just decided, for some reason, it just felt a little bit more sci-fi to me than dystopian. I think you could easily argue it could fit into either genre very, very easy, but I just decided to put it in the sci-fi genre. I'm sure everybody's very familiar with Fahrenheit 451. It's one of those books that I think 99% of people have to read in school. That's where I first read it. And I think of all the books I had to read for school, my 2 favorite of all times is To Kill a Mockingbird and Fahrenheit 451. And both of those books are still 2 of my favorite books of all time. I always say I have a hard time picking my favorite book. Those 2 books are definitely within like a group of 5. They're really like my 5 co-favorite books of all time. Love this book. The concept is so important. I think it's something that we're never really done without being in danger of facing censorship, but also humanity in general stopping for a thirst of knowledge and to learn. I think it's very easy, especially today with social media and stuff, and so much content online and TV and movies and stuff, just to kind of enjoy the popcorn stuff and not really try to gain more knowledge. I think that's as much what Fahrenheit 451 is about as censorship. Is not only were people letting books being burnt, they didn't really have any desire. I think one reason they were fine with books being burnt, I should say, is because they had no desire to gain more knowledge and better themselves and better civilization and themselves and their families and all that type of stuff. And I think it's a danger that we're always facing as a society. And Fahrenheit 451 is there to remind you why you can't let that happen, because if you go too far down that road, it really leads to something awful. Now, with that being said, the book does this in a very important, but it's still a great book, even if you don't really think the message is that important. The characters are great, the story's awesome, it's very interesting. It's an overall great read. So if you, for some reason, you've never read Fahrenheit 451, read it. If you read it in school and at the time you just weren't really into reading, and you're like, I didn't really like it because I had to do it for a class, there was assigned reading and blah. Go back and read it. I think you'll enjoy it a lot more now when you kind of have a chance to kind of do it by your own choice, not because it was a book that was assigned to you to read. So please check out Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. And lastly, my favorite sci-fi book of all time is Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn, a Star Wars book, as you can see. Of course, this book is no longer canon since Star Wars bought Disney, although the main character of this book Grand Admiral Thrawn has been brought back into Star Wars canon. They've done a new book about him. Of course, he's on the cartoon Star Wars Rebels, I believe is the official title. I'm hoping at some point he makes a movie. That would make me so happy. But this book is so awesome. I think the best way to describe how much I love this book and why it's my favorite sci-fi book of all time is my favorite Star Wars character of all time is Grand Admiral Thrawn. And up until recently, he'd only appeared in books. So, I'm a huge Star Wars movie fan. I love Star Wars movies so much. I think it shows you how much this book means to me, that I prefer a character in this book than any character that's ever been in any of the Star Wars movies. And even other characters who were introduced in this book are some of my favorite characters of all time, like Mara Jade is such an awesome character. And then there's other great characters in here. The entire storyline, and this is the beginning of the Thrawn trilogy. There's 3 books. The trilogy is amazing. It's so great. I remember at the time, a lot of people felt that way. They wished if they ever did episodes 7, 8, 9, that it would be the Thrawn trilogy. I think everybody realized that was never going to happen, because if you did new books, new movies, you probably wanted it to be a surprise, not something people could just go read and kind of expect. Because the great thing about Star Wars, you never know what you're going to get when you go in. So once Disney bought it, I think everybody realized, they're just not going to do the Thrawn trilogy. But still secretly, I kind of wish that this had been episode 7. But it is a great book. So much so that I always tell people, even if you're not interested in reading Star Wars books, read this book, because it is just a great science fiction novel. If you like science fiction, you'll love Heir to the Empire. Even if, like I said, you don't have any interest in reading all the Star Wars books that are out there, still check this book out. You owe yourself to read Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. In my opinion, Grand Admiral Thrawn is not only the best Star Wars book character of all time, and character in general in the genre, he is one of the best science fiction characters of all time. Any books, not just Star Wars books. So please check out Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. If you see this version I have, get it. It's actually the 20th anniversary, and it's actually annotated by the author, so there's all sorts of cool information in there that I think you really like. Kind of give you an idea how much I love this book. I actually have on my bookshelf 3 versions of it. I have the original paperback, and I also have the graphic novel version. So that shows you how much I love Heir to the Empire. But anyway, that's my top 10 favorite science fiction books of all time. I know this video is long, having looked at the clock, so I apologize for it being a lengthy video, but I am very passionate about science fiction books. In the comment section below, let me know what some of your favorite science fiction books are of all time. Who knows, maybe if there's some of them I haven't read before, I'll add it to my to-be-read list. If you've read any of these books and you have opinions on them, let me know. Be sure to like the video, I appreciate that, and please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to do a big push to increase my subscriber numbers due to some new rules from YouTube, so I really appreciate it, anybody that can subscribe to the channel. And while you're doing that, if you haven't really watched a lot of my older videos, please go back and check a lot of my videos in my back catalog and just see what you enjoy, like those videos, leave some comments and stuff like that. I appreciate all the views, comments, likes, and all that sort of stuff. So really appreciate it, and happy reading.